right. I appreciate you stopping to talk.
Sure.
I'm sorry, can you introduce yourself again?
My name's Dave.
All right, Brandon.
Nice
Talking to you. So you asked me why you should be vegan.
Why I should be a vegan.
Yeah. So I'm going to start by defining veganism.
Sure.
And then you tell me if you disagree or you agree or whatever.
Okay.
So veganism is an ideology that rejects the commodity status of animals, right?
Okay.
So that means we don't want to use them, abuse them, or kill them for food, clothing, entertainment, etc.
How is that a commodity though?
Yeah, so when you're using somebody for your own personal gain,
Sure.
you're commodifying, you're exploiting them,
Okay.
and then commodity goes into effect because we profit off of them as well.
Well, commodity is just the profit side, right?
Correct.
It doesn't have to be like it doesn't have to have adverse effects for it to be a commodity, right? You can commoditize water's commodity.
That's
right?
correct. Yeah. So just because it is a commodity doesn't necessarily entail harm or
Right.
adverse effects, but with what we do to animals, it does, and
Well,
that's
it
the
doesn't have to,
exploitation,
though, right? Because if something's commoditized, like water's commoditized. We're not harming the water.
So can you explain how you can get a steak without harming animals?
Well, animals die, right?
So I guess we'll start with, do you know how we get over, I think it's like over 95% of animal products?
Sure, tell me. I don't know. No.
So
I don't know.
factory farming, right? So in order for the animals that you eat to be produced, we have to breed them, right?
Right.
So we're not finding animals that died out in the wild naturally, right? Obviously everything dies. The biggest thing that vegans try to reduce or eliminate entirely is the intentional rights violations, right? So there's a difference between, like you mentioned, maybe an animal dying naturally and then eating its corpse, if you like, versus breeding them intentionally, keeping them in captivity, and then killing them several years before their natural lifespan.
Let me ask you a question, right? So, if you take the whole farming situation out of it, right?
You mean factory farming?
Sure. Take factory farming out of it, right? If I am a human being, I'm an herbivore, right? And I need meat to sustain.
You
my
don't.
health.
And I could get into that as well.
Well, that's what an omnivore is, right?
No, so humans are omnivorous, but we're now more classified as opportunistic eaters. So omnivorous people who can follow omnivorous diets, you can eat both, but you don't need one or the other, right? So humans can survive solely off of plants. The best research we have shows that vegans not only are not at any greater risk of any nutrient deficiencies or especially protein deficiency, but actually there's a lot of health benefits to going completely plant-based. Vegans are at the lowest risk of most of our chronic diseases like heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity. So when we're talking about health, right, because I do want to get back to the ethics. I noticed you kind of derailed there, but when it comes to health, that's where research has to go into effect. And when we look at the research, the best peer-reviewed research, and I'll give you sources after, veganism is not only perfectly adequate for health, but it's actually beneficial in a lot of ways, right? But back to the ethics, if you don't mind, because that's.
Are there no adverse effects to veganism?
Can you name any?
Well, I saw a news report that a vegan just died of starvation, right?
Okay, so how many people who follow an omnivorous diet die of disease?
Of disease?
Disease. Diet-related disease.
A large amount, right? I mean, disease. I mean, that's
No, diet-related disease.
diet-related disease. I have no idea. Why don't you tell me?
Okay, so heart disease is the #1 killer in the world, and heart disease is primarily a dietary-related disease, right? Same thing with obesity, same thing with type 2 diabetes, not type 1, type 2. So when we look at diets, right, obviously, as you may know, a lot of people, I know a lot of people, I think it's 98.5% of the world is still eating omnivorously or still eating animal products in one way. And most people end up dying of a dietary-related disease such as heart disease, right? There are certain genetic risk factors, stuff like that, but for the most part, it's preventable, right? When we're talking about clogging of the arteries. So pointing to one anecdote and saying that somebody starved, and I haven't seen the report, so I can't verify.
It was anecdotal.
But saying that one person may be starved on a vegan diet, how many people are starving in the world, right? So that's not really a great example. But again, I understand you're trying to kind of derail, but back to the ethical argument, right? You're bringing up very niche specific cases, but when we look at the majority of the system, over 95% of animal products are created due to factory farming, right? So what I want to know is, what is your justification for contributing to the death of billions of sentient animals that can feel, experience things,
If we're
etc.?
talking about ethics, right? Morals and ethics, right? Is it ethical for a pack of lions to eat an antelope? Is that ethical? Is it moral or is it immoral?
So we could talk about like philosophically if it's moral, even in necessity, if it's moral to kill, right? That's a kind of a different discussion. But when it comes to lions, I think we'd agree that they are in a completely different situation. They need the animal products to survive.
But
And
is it moral or is it immoral though?
so again,
Let's set a ground.
yeah.
Right?
So I would say it gets a little shady because yes, they do have a necessity, but would I argue that just because you have a necessity, it's okay to kill or for food? I don't know. Again, that's a different philosophical discussion. But again, you're really trying to derail. So because I haven't gotten in.
Questions.
But here's
You're
the thing:
with the sign.
I asked a specific question and you haven't given an answer, right?
What's the question?
So the question is, what is your justification when you don't need meat to survive? You're not a lion. You don't shit outside.
I
You
don't know
don't.
that it's been demonstrated that we do not need meat
Okay,
protein to survive.
so even if I go anecdotally like you did, I've been vegan for almost 7 years. I have no nutrient deficiencies. I am in perfectly good health.
Great.
Right, thank you. So even if we go anecdote to anecdote, clearly I'm an example of where you don't need animal products to survive.
For now.
But with,
Right.
I don't know what that means.
Well, I mean, for now, I mean, you're healthy now.
Correct. Do you have any, because I have plenty of research showing the support of vegan diets for health. Do you have any research whatsoever?
No, just the fact that the human race is here now, and we've been here for how many years, off the same omnivorous diet that's existed for how many years, right?
So
And there's obviously there are supplements and alternatives now, but I don't think that those can replace the.
So when you say you don't think, right, that means that has to have some kind of, like, you have to have some basis for thinking that, right? But if you have no research, if you have nothing supporting that, you're just kind of acting off of feeling, right? But when it comes to nutrition, that's a science, right? So when we look at, you mentioned supplements. 5,000 years ago, we didn't have the supplementation we have. We didn't have the fortified
5,000
food.
years ago.
Right, that's my point. We also did a lot of other things 5,000 years ago, right? So you're appealing to nature. We could appeal to nature for sexual assault. We could appeal to nature for things like...
What do you mean we can appeal to nature for sexual assault?
So you're saying, well, this is something we've always done, so therefore we should continue to do it,
I
right?
haven't always done sexual assault.
As a human race, no, not you. You've only been alive, but as the human race, we have sexual assault and specifically rape has been rampant throughout our history. So has slavery, so has cannibalism, so has a lot of horrible injustices, right? But unlike those things, with those things, we have chosen to get away from those practices, even though a lot of us are here as a result of sexual assault, right? We have chosen to get away from those practices because they cause harm. Similarly with animal products, yes, did we use them and were they beneficial at some point for our survival? Sure. But in the modern day, right, just like how we use soap, just like how we use cars, we have adapted to make our lives better, to make our lives more efficient, and to cause less harm. So even though we did something back then, does not mean and is not a justification that we should continue to do it. So again, I asked you, what's your justification? And you said nutrition, when, again, I could give you sources, but nutrition is definitely not a justification, especially when we have the science that we have,
I didn't
right?
say nutrition. Let's boil it down to what the actual argument is, right?
Sure.
The argument is moral versus immoral, right?
Correct.
That's what it boils down to. And I don't think that you've demonstrated that it is immoral for one species to eat another species.
Sure, okay,
Right.
maybe I could do a better job of that. So, again, when it comes to what we do to animals, so are there, let me try and, I guess, go into a different direction. So, are you familiar with the term speciesism?
No.
Okay. So speciesism is a discrimination against one animal solely based on species, right? So humans are animals, dogs, cats are animals, cows, chickens, pigs are animals, right? The one thing we all have in common is sentience. If you're not familiar, I'll define
I know
it.
what
or-
sentience is, yeah.
Okay, but just for the video.
Gotcha.
Sentience is the ability to experience pain, experience joy, to have your own conscious experience, right? That's also what separates sentient animals from non-sentient animals like mushrooms or microbacteria, also plants, right? So because we all share that in common, right? That is why it matters. That's why their experience matters, right? So I'll ask you this. Would you be for the factory farming of dogs or cats?
No.
Okay. So that's directly in line with speciesism, where even though there is no moral difference in terms of like how the actions affect the animal, even though there's no moral difference between a dog and a cow or a dog and a pig, right? In fact, pigs and dogs, or pigs and cows, in a lot of ways, are more intelligent than dogs. You immediately reject the factory farming when it comes to the dog, but you feel like you need to be given an argument that factory farming cows, chickens, and pigs are immoral. So that's directly speciesism. It's just like any other form of discrimination or ignorance.
I could make the argument that it's immoral to establish factory farming for dogs and cats. Yeah, I could also make the same argument that it's immoral to do it to cows and pigs. And I could still say that it's not immoral for me to eat meat.
So forget about, like, even with that statement, right?
I'm talking if we boil it down to a absolute fundamental, basic argument versus morality versus immorality, you can say, sure, factory farming is immoral, right? Okay,
so that
doesn't mean it's immoral for me to eat meat.
So time out.
Because it's not the same reason that it's not immoral for a lion to eat an antelope or for a whale to eat a fish.
So time out. So are you saying, I just want to make sure that I understand you correctly, you are in agreement that factory farming is immoral?
I think that you can make the argument, absolutely, that some...
But is that what you believe? Do you believe that factory farming is immoral?
I have seen videos on YouTube of some disgusting factory farming situations where they are doing horrible things to animals, and I don't agree with it. I don't think
standard practice. So.
Sure, it is. I know Massachusetts recently outlawed a whole bunch of stuff, and they did. They can't keep chickens in certain size cages. And
so all they did was expand it a little bit. But the point is, like, whenever we're breeding and keeping in captivity billions of animals, right? And then not only is that torturous because of genetic modification, where they have to lose nutrients, their bones break, they get done with diseases, but then we slaughter them, right? And very prematurely, especially with cows. I think they get slaughtered at 18 months. They can live up to 10 years, right? So the reason why I'm asking, because again, I would love to talk about the morality of killing, but if we can at least agree on that factory farming is immoral, like I mentioned,
absolutely, some forms.
Are there any forms of factory farming?
In other countries, it's much more disgusting than it is here. If you talk about factory farming that they practice in some of the third world countries, I don't want to start listing them, but
yeah, I mean it's bad everywhere. But
it's bad. Well, it's worse in places than it is.
Okay.
And I think when you boil, and a lot of it's bad, and I think if you boil it down to a fundamental level and say that you're the question is, which veganism versus being not being a vegan, is it moral for one animal to eat another animal, or is it immoral? And I don't think that you can differentiate.
So I'm just trying to get a consensus, man, because you keep almost answering.
With different ideas.
No. I'm trying to get a consensus on your view of factory farming. Forget about killing. I would love, we can move on to killing in one moment, but I need a consensus, right? Because if you say that it's not immoral, if factory farming isn't immoral, then we're going to go deeper on that. Like I said, I can compare it with a dog.
Factory farming was not immoral.
Okay, so we agree that factory farming is immoral.
I agree that factory farming can be immoral, sure.
Okay. See what you're doing? You're smarter than this, man. I know you know what you're doing. So when you're saying that factory farming can be immoral, you're implying that in only certain circumstances, factory farming is immoral. Can you name a circumstance where factory farming isn't immoral?
I'm not a factory farmer, but I know that there are farms that are far worse than other farms and what they do.
Okay, so let's say there was a farm where there was it was a rape factory, right?
What is
and no, it's another analogy, right? So in some farms they rape them harder, and in other farms
rape them. You keep talking about rape.
Yeah, so I'm equating. So you're saying that some factories are nicer than others.
Where does rape come from?
So I'm using another form of harm to draw a parallel, right? Because there's one kill factory that kills them nicer, and there's another kill factory that kills them less nicer.
Is killing not nice enough that you have to use rape as an analogy?
Well, because clearly, like, you keep saying, because clearly you're not understanding it in the form of killing, because you keep saying, well, some factories are nicer. What I'm saying is, if we use
nicer, those are your words.
Okay, you said some factories are less bad. Yeah, worse. Okay, so what I'm saying is, if we take another harm, right? Because murder and killing is a rights violation, right? So I'm just using another rights violation to draw a parallel, right? So another rights violation is sexual assault, right? So if you have one sexual assault factory that does 3 forms of sexual assault, and another one, no, please, if you allow me to finish, and another factory that only does 1 form of sexual assault, I think just hearing that we would both be in agreement that both forms of factories are immoral. One may be better. We could say, okay, this one is less harmful, but I think we would both be in agreement that they're both immoral. Same thing with other factory farms.
Because you're making the comparison, right, of rape to killing.
No. I'm making a parallel. I'm not saying they're equal.
Okay.
I'm not saying they're equal.
That's what parallel is.
No. So I'm trying to draw a parallel in terms of how they're similar but not equal. So it's the logic behind the thought, not saying that rape and murder are equivalent. Obviously, they're different harms. But
Which is worse, rape or murder?
Well, again, you're trying to derail.
I'm just asking, because you're saying they're not parallel. And you're the one
well, I don't know. I mean, that's a separate conversation.
You're the one who keeps bringing it up, right? You're the one who keeps comparing to rape, not me. You're the one who keeps bringing that comparison up.
So I'm
Which
not.
Is worse?
Yeah. So I'm not comparing. Again, I feel like you're missing. So it's like I'm making a parallel of how the logic you're using. If we brought it to.
You know what parallel means?
Okay.
It means
so
the same level, right? Parallel.
Okay.
Is rape.
No. On the same
than
line
murder.
in terms of logic. I'm not talking about the act itself. We could use something way less. We could use punching in the face if you want, okay? So there's one factory where people get punched in the face 3 times against their will. There's another factory where people get punched in the face 1 time against their will. You would argue one is less bad.
Which farms are the animals getting killed 3 times against their will versus the farms that are getting killed 1 time against their will?
You okay. Dude, you are either specifically purposely derailing, or I can't understand how you're not understanding.
You're the one who's drawing these comparisons. And I'm just asking you what the fuck you're talking about.
Sure. So, no, I'm good, man. So you asked,
respectful, man.
right? So you said some factory farm. Just follow me, right? Forget about the actual, like the rape, the punching. It's not about it's about the logic, right? So you said some factory farms are worse than others, right? So that entails that some farms cause more harm and some farms cause less harm. But all of them cause harm.
Sure.
So for you to say that only the ones that are worse are immoral and the ones that are less worse are moral, right? Because you said they can be.
To define what is your definition of morality? Because sure, some things are more moral than others.
Right.
And harm is subjective, but is it harmful for a lion to kill an antelope?
Okay. So you keep going back to the line again.
Sure,
I'm trying to get consent.
Right. We're trying to establish a fundamental basis for this conversation,
So
right?
I'm trying to get a consensus on factory farming because here's the thing.
Is it moral or immoral for a lion to kill an antelope for food?
Are you a lion?
Is it immoral?
Do you do other things that lions do? Do you kill your young? Do you rape? Do you shit outside?
Rape?
Yeah, they rape all the time. Almost every. So hold on, because you keep trying to act as if.
I'm asking you a question that you won't answer.
Hold on. Oh, no, because you have not answered my question.
You can't answer the question.
Hold on. No.
Is it immoral?
Okay. So
listen, yes or no?
Okay. So in a debate, hold on.
This is a debate.
Okay, no, right.
Sort of.
So in a debate, I asked you a question. Sure. You smirked when I pointed it out because you know what you're doing. I said, can we agree that factory farming is immoral? And you said it can be. You know what you're doing, man. You know what you're doing. So are we in agreement that factories where billions of animals get stuffed inside just to be tortured and then murdered is immoral? Do we agree with that?
It can be. Yes.
Okay. Can you point out an example where it is moral for factory farming is moral?
Can you?
Yep. See, dodging. Can you point out?
You're not doing the same
I
thing?
asked the question first.
Oh, but
If I ask the question first and you dodge,
answer my question.
because I asked the question first.
I think that I'll answer your question.
Sure.
I think that it is immoral to cause more harm than necessary for humans to harvest animals beyond their need to survive.
Deal. Okay. So if we can agree that factory farming is immoral, right? For example, over 95% of animal products. Okay. Over 95% of animal products are factory farm, right? So even with that consensus, you should already be abstaining from all the meat in the grocery stores, all the meat in the restaurants, because they're done via factory farming, right? Unless you're hunting all your meat or going to local farms. No. Hold on. No. Because I'm trying to draw. I'm trying to draw. So I'm trying to draw a contradiction in your views, because you're saying that factory farming is immoral.
Let me ask you a question.
Okay,
Is it immoral to hunt meat?
Yes.
So then what?
Because it's unnet. So my point is, I think all
You
killing.
just used it
So I think that
as
all.
an argument.
No. Okay, dude. I'm going in stages. I'm trying to walk you through stages.
You used hunting as an argument, not me.
I didn't
You
use
brought it
hunting.
up.
No.
You brought it up.
I'm saying. Okay.
You
I'm
said
saying.
you said it's not like you're hunting me.
No.
Those are your words.
Yeah.
Those are
I'm
your
not
words.
saying that when
You're
I.
gonna cut this. I know you're gonna cut this video up.
No,
You're
I
gonna cut that part right out.
No. I
You're
upload.
gonna cut this part right out.
Nope.
Right?
I upload the whole thing in full. But if you allow me to elaborate why I brought up hunting, when I brought up hunting, I'm not saying hunting is moral. I'm saying that forget about hunt because those are different cases. That's not the mass, right? That's not where the animal products. I'm trying to point out a contradiction with factory farming and your beliefs, right? From there, we can move on.
I subscribe to factory farming. All I'm saying.
What do you mean you don't subscribe to factory farming? Do you go to grocery stores? Do you go to restaurants?
Your sign
Hold on.
says-
Do you go to restaurants? Do you go to grocery stores?
Yes, I do, yes.
Okay, so by your own actions, you are contributing to factory farming. And by that consensus, even if you say it can be, you're not sourcing what factory farms are getting your meat from. Hold on. I'm trying to draw a point. Hold on. Really?
Are you against
But
factory farming or
all right.
are you against eating meat in
All killing.
general?
And I'll explain why. So the reason why I'm against all killing, you brought up that it's immoral to cause more harm than necessary.
Sure.
Based on the science, there is no necessity for animal products, unlike lions,
Based
right?
on what side?
I have
you're
sources.
Cherry picking.
Cherry
Yeah.
pick?
Yeah, you're
No, I'm not
cherry-picking
cherry.
information
Do you have
because-
any? Hold on.
Because there are studies that
Show that meat's a necessity?
that meat-based protein is better than
Okay.
Yeah,
So
I have
meat-based protein
whey
being
protein, too much of it can kill you. It's bad for you. Animal-based protein is better.
whey protein is animal based, just for it's from dairy. But anyway, see that even goes to show you that you're not familiar with the science. So there is no study that shows that animal products are essential for health. So something being more bioavailable doesn't mean that you still can't get protein from plants. You can get all the protein you need from plants, and vegans are at no higher risk of protein deficiency. That's in the science. It's not cherry picking. The best organizations we have support that. The WHO, World Health Organization, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, all of these organizations, plus all the peer-reviewed research, and I have sources on me. I will show you.
I believe you. Actually, I take your word for it. You wouldn't be standing out here with a sign.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
But
Well, hold on, just to finish that point. So when you say it is immoral to cause more harm than necessary, that implies what we're doing to animals is already necessary, and it isn't, and that's the end.
what you haven't done is you haven't established whether or not the actual killing of an animal is immoral or moral. You have not answered that question.
I have. I'm saying if it's unnecessary.
Is it moral or immoral for
Immoral.
a lion to kill an antelope?
Okay, we are not in the same situation as a lion.
So is it? So you're saying it's moral for the lion?
It depends. I don't know. I'd have to go into it because again, like let's say we're in a survival situation on an island, right? And it's us or another person, and we can choose to eat that human to survive, right? Would that be moral? Would that be immoral? It gets a little shady,
Okay,
right?
I have a follow-up question.
Okay.
All right. So there was a plane crash, right? They actually made a movie about it. It's called
I know,
Frozen. And the people
They ate
that
all the people.
crashed on that plane, some of them died, and some of them survived. And the survivors ate the ones who. Do you want to wait? Do you want to wait a second?
I'm gonna restart because we're gonna run out. All right, go ahead. You were talking about the plane.
Right. So they crashed. There were survivors and there were people who didn't survive, and the survivors were forced to eat the people who didn't survive. Were they immoral in doing so?
So two things. When you say forced, they could have chosen to die. Right. So they weren't forced. They chose to eat those people based out of their will to live. Right. So when I would say in a survival situation, is what they did moral? Again, I think we're entering a gray area where it's either all of them die or some of them live because they ate the other ones. Right. So would I say it's moral? I don't know. Again, I would say like. From a purely philosophical standpoint, I would say it's probably immoral, but they're willing to cross that line of committing an immoral action to save their own life, right? So in a situation like that, and same thing with lions don't have moral agency. So lions cannot weigh right and wrong, or at least if they can, they do it very poorly. Lions eat zebras alive from the inside out. They eat their intestines. We are so different than lions. We can weigh right and wrong. We can choose what is moral and what
Is
isn't.
it immoral for a lion to eat a zebra from the inside out and rip its intestines out? And is that
I would say it's an immoral action, but they don't know, either can't they don't know any better. They don't have moral agency, so they do it out of survival.
Which is more immoral? A lion to rip the intestines out of a zebra, or me to order a steak at Main Street Sports Bar and Grill across the street?
I would say you order a steak, and the reason why is because you have moral agency. So I'll ask you this: is somebody who is severely mentally challenged to the point where they don't understand right and wrong, committing an immoral action like murder, is completely different than somebody like you who does understand right and wrong, committing an immoral action like murder. So yeah, they're both immoral. They're both immoral, but with the person who's severely mentally challenged, you're kind of like, okay, they had no idea, they didn't understand. In your case, that you did intentional murder because you can weigh right and wrong. So I would say same thing with a lion, right? What a lot of non-vegans do, right? I don't know if it's a primal thing or whatever, but they appeal to nothing that lions do except for eating meat. They remove the sexual assault. They remove the infanticide, which is where they kill young. They remove the shitting outside. They remove the eating alive, raw from the inside out. They remove all of that. All they do is they use a lion to justify them going into a air-conditioned restaurant and order a steak from a factory farm. And that is a direct contradiction. If you're trying to say that because lions do something, that we should be allowed to do it,
I'm just asking
it's a completely...
I'm just asking you what your basis for morality is.
And I think I answered it. The basis for morality is rights violations that are unnecessary. And even if they're necessary, I would still say violating somebody's rights when they don't want to be violated is immoral. Now, in some cases, right, maybe in indigenous tribes or in the plane crash situation, you can live with doing something immoral to save your own ass. But we have the choice. There's Stop and Shop, there's Market Basket, there's so many different options. We do not have to do that, right? And if you don't have to, separate from nutrition, which you may or may not believe me, but if you don't have to, then what is your justification for continuing to do so?
It's a good question. I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you.
Question. Look, the reason why I'm out here and why I've been vegan for 7 years is because I could not answer that question, right? I went into veganism trying to find the best diet that would help me live the longest and stay away from our #1 killer, heart disease. Once I got into that, I learned about the ethics and knowing just the intentional rights violations. We literally, not counting even marine life, we breed and we kill billions of animals to just eat them when we don't have to. We have so many different plants, so many protein sources, so much nutritional science supporting it. And I have a background in nutrition as well.
What's the burger that is vegan?
Beyond?
What is
Possible?
it?
Beyond?
Impossible, yeah. Have you had one?
I have.
Do you like it?
In terms of getting the burger taste without killing, yes. I don't eat them every day or even, I eat them a few times a year.
Shit, dude.
Well, I mean, some people like them, some people don't. But my question is, again, is taste, right? Because now, look, I think we've talked about the ethics. Now you're going to taste, right?
Yeah, I think it's part of that's an important part of the argument. This stuff is here, right? Whether it's immoral or not. I do think that some of the factory farming should be reined in. I think that some of the immoral practices they do are not good. I think that they should be regulated. It's going to cause the meat to be more expensive, which sucks. But I think that's worth it in the long run. If you're talking about more humane treatment of animals.
I'm not talking about more humane treatment.
You're not.
Yeah, because
I'm talking about what I'm talking about.
Right,
so
okay,
to make my point, if you're asking me to justify why I still order a steak, steak is my favorite of all the things to eat.
I love spicy chicken sandwiches. I used to go to fucking Wendy's and get 3 spicy chicken sandwiches almost every single week, right? It's not so, there's this misconception that vegans just love to eat grass and tofu and that's what we were born at. I ate animal products for 18 years of my life, right? The reason why I stopped isn't because I didn't like it. It's because that taste, that 15 minutes of taste while I'm sitting down and eating was not worth A, the contradiction, and B, the actual impact of my money contributing to the death of billions of animals unnecessarily, right? So that's where I stand, and I appreciate your pushback. I definitely could tell you dabble in something, right? So I appreciate the pushback, but when we actually dial it in, right? We could talk about animal welfare all we want, but at the end of the day, my stance for morality is there is no moral way of impeding or causing rights violations to another sentient animal that can feel pain, joy, etc., just like dogs and cats. And that's why we have laws protecting dogs and cats from animal abuse unnecessarily, right? And even if it is necessary, I think I explained my point the best I could there, but we get into a gray area. But especially in the United States, in Massachusetts, in Plymouth, Massachusetts, the people who I'm talking to, there is no excuse to continue, and that's it. That's where I stand, and I hope that makes sense.
I think that your arguments do make a lot of sense, and I respect your intelligence and the amount of obviously research that you put into it. I don't agree with your stance on morality to a point, but I mean, it's
So one last question then. If you say you don't agree, so can you think of an example of where it would be moral to unnecessarily cause a rights violation to another sentient animal?
I mean, you worded that in a way that it's like, of course, there's no reason to unnecessarily do anything, right?
There we go. So
Well, I mean,
then you do agree. Like if you can sign off that unnecessarily, right?
There's
Forget about
no
necessity.
reason to do anything unnecessarily. I mean, that's a ridiculous question.
Well, no, you're not. You don't.
Name me a reason to do anything unnecessary.
Sure. So in
Pick
terms,
one. Anything.
yeah. So for example, right, I enjoy walking outside, right? It's not a necessity for me. I could do other things, right? But it doesn't cause harm, right? When I walk outside, don't point out the ants or whatever. What I'm saying on the, in the grand scheme, it doesn't cause any harm for me to walk, right? Where we need justifications, right? That's why I'm a firm believer of people being able to do whatever they want.
Let me ask you a question real quick.
Okay, go ahead.
If the reason that you would walk outside is that there's no other reason to walk outside other than you enjoy it, right?
Yeah.
You enjoy it?
Yeah.
That's the only reason? All right, that was my question.
Yeah, because
The answer is that you enjoy it, right?
I enjoy it. So, and the reason why that's okay is because I'm not contributing to the death of billions of animals. I'm not causing harm, right? But if I enjoyed
What if
something,
you step on bugs, dude?
well, see, I told you not to bring that up. Look, us being alive, some animals are gonna die, obviously. But there's a difference between that and me going outside to intentionally stomp on every single bug or kill every animal.
I'm gonna, because I gotta get back. My
Sure,
drink's
sure.
getting warm. I'm gonna ask you a question. The question is, fuck, I lost my train of thought.
No problem.
It was a good question. Take my word for it. This is gonna be good.
No, I believe it.
We were talking about commoditized animals, right? Cows, pigs, chickens.
Yes.
What's worse, right? Is it commoditizing an animal or an animal going extinct, a species going extinct? What's worse?
So if we put that in, and I'm going to answer with an example, right? You might disagree with my use of parallel, but if we put that in any other species example, right? So let's look at dogs, cats, or even humans, right? Some argue that being born at all is better than never being born at all, right? So being able to live life is better than not being born. But would we accept parents having children just to put them in cages, barely feed them, cause them immense pain, and then to slaughter them at 6 years old? Nobody would use the argument of, oh, well, at least they got to live. So what I would say is it would be better to have an extinct species, or obviously I wouldn't want them to be extinct. I want sanctuaries, which is actually happening now. But I would say that a species not existing is morally more consistent than, as sad as I would as I would be to never see a cow, chicken, or pig again, than to only have them here to abuse them, torture them, and kill them. That would be my answer.
So, obviously in certain situations there are farms that do that, right? They keep them in cages and
95%, yeah.
whatever the percentage is, they exist. Massachusetts just passed a law where you cannot keep them in cages.
Still keeps them in cages. Still keeps them in very tight.
I
So
think that it's not working and moving in the right direction.
no, it is. But
right.
I'm doing my part. That's why I'm here.
I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate the respectful conversation.
Yeah.
And
Sorry if it got a little heated. It just,
I
with
love
debates
it. I
got.
love it, dude.
I live off this stuff. Go ahead.
I think we're moving in the right direction, and I do think that it is better for an animal to be commoditized in possibly a free-range situation. They're living long lives. Milk cows get milked, whatever. Argue with me or not.
Sure.
I think it's better. Obviously, we move away from the factory farming situation where it's really bad. Got to find a way to keep up with the demand, but I think that there's probably a middle ground. I think that there's probably a middle ground you and I could reach since we can't agree on an objective morality.
Well, so I'll use your terminology, right? Are there things that are moving in the right direction that are better? Absolutely. Yeah. The lack of, changing the regulations around factory farming, animal welfare, different laws being passed for animal abuse. Yeah, all of that is better. Absolutely. But just how we went from slavery to segregation, that's better, right? But ultimately, the goal is liberation, right?
Where are we now?
So that's right. So the goal is, right, I am not talking to people because I don't think we're moving. I think we are moving in the right direction, but can we get there quicker? And I want people to actually put the two and two together. I don't want them to be forced to because of government regulation, because we all know how that went with any other form of oppression, whether it be sexism, racism, homophobia. People still commit crimes, still go against the regulation. I want people to put the two and two together. And Yeah, the middle ground, I think, again, I'm going to hold you to this because that's kind of the point of this, is you did agree that unnecessarily it's immoral to cause any type of rights violation. And unnecessarily. And in this case, in the meat take case, and I'll give you a card so you have the resources, you will see it's completely unnecessary.
I think that's debatable. I do.
I would love to see your science, man. I'd love to see your science, dude.
Well, your science. I haven't seen your sources. You can send me your sources, and I will look into them.
Yeah.
I will, but I don't know if there's an objective basis yet. I think there's not.
Going against scientific consensus, man.
Science is not based on consensus.
Yep.
The consensus of science, 500 years ago, was that the world was flat.
Correct, but then that changed.
It doesn't matter what the consensus is. There's no such thing as a scientific consensus.
There is. Yeah, I could explain.
Science
So
is not based
when
on consensus. Science
it is.
based
So
on-
how we do regulations, if the majority of the nutrition experts, the science.
regulations are politics, which is completely divorced.
No, I mean health regulations. So like the use of soap, the use of different vaccines, the use of stuff. It's based off of all of the best scientists reviewing the data and going, okay, this is the consensus we reached, right? That can change. So like in the form of like the planets or whatever, right? Our understanding of that has progressed. Just like how 10,000 years ago, we thought we needed animal products to survive. Now that consensus is changing, right? Now, if in 20 years, there's science that shows that you can't be vegan and that the nutrition is totally out of whack, then we'll talk. But as of now, that's not the case at all. The best science we have shows, in fact, it's beneficial. But I appreciate the talk, man. I guess we could end it there. But here, I'll give you a...